So in this video, I want to talk about a couple of topics, mainly to do with this episode, and a lot of it is to do with Rudy and Sarah's relationship and some of the criticisms about how Sarah was designed and her attractiveness, and then of course some of the scenes and people's criticisms towards the episode feeling rushed and certain scenes being rushed in their view. Again, I will be giving my full thoughts, so please listen to the entire video before giving your thoughts on my video, because again, there is a lot of context to go over and a lot of little things that I will bring up as discussion points and then give my own thoughts on. So the first thing I want to talk about is the relationship between Sarah and Rudy. This is of course something that we could see from the very first episode of them being introduced, or technically the second episode, but the first episode of Volume 7, which is the rough relationship between Rudy and Sarah, and how she is a little bit rough around the edges. A lot of people refer to her as a discount version or a Walmart version of Eris. I've spoken about that in a previous video, how I don't agree with that statement, but I understand why some people think it, because of it's Rudy's perspective. You're seeing the world through his eyes, and so that's how he's projecting onto Sarah. But their relationship does warm up, and I mean, for light novel readers, we knew this was coming because of this particular scene and how Sarah has definitely warmed up a bit to the point where she defends him. That is pretty straightforward. The thing that some people have been complaining about is apparently Sarah is too attractive, and that the anime has made her look much more attractive than in the light novels. To that I actually disagree. I always felt that she was rather cute and attractive in the light novels, which is why Rudy, you know, gets a little bit flustered around her from time to time, because he can see that she's a cute girl. So I don't agree with that statement, but I've also seen people say that her bust size has been, or chest region has been increased in size. I don't agree with that either. I mean, there was a fun remark in the anime episode itself when Rudy goes to grab her to stop her from falling because he's using his eye, and she goes, "Oh, what are you grabbing?" He goes, "Nothing in particular." She takes it as an insult. He's just trying to sort of brush it off as, "Hey, you know, I wasn't trying to grab anything, you know, nothing in particular, just trying to help her before she falls over." But she took it as an insult because she's very insecure, clearly, from that subtle reference. From that, I mean, I say that, and most people can go, "No, duh," but let's be honest here, a lot of anime fans can't pick up on the most subtle cues when it comes to women. You only need to read my comment section some days, and also just online in general, to realize that, hey, most of you in my comment section probably understand subtle cues, but there are a lot of people out there that it just goes straight over their head. Again, not everyone's perfect, but I don't agree with the statement of her being made more attractive. I feel like it's pretty much in line with what the light novels always showed her as from the images, but again, some people feel that she's been made much cuter or attractive than light novels itself. I don't know, I don't see that. And as far as the bust size goes, wasn't really paying attention to the art itself in the light novels to notice, but I don't really think there is much of a difference really when thinking about it. Now, as far as the episode feeling rushed, I knew how the opening was going to play out, where Rudy was going to be doing his odd jobs around, and I knew that was going to be pruned down a bit. I was surprised how they did the specific scene with the girl with the kneecap, because Rudy does heal a girl that looks fairly poor, and there's this kind of scene in the light novels where she kind of panics, because in this world healers are quite expensive, and she comes from a much more lower background, the lower class, so they can't exactly afford healers. So the first thing she freaks out is, "Oh my god, he's going to charge me for healing." And it is actually a common tactic that's actually noted in the light novels, that healers will just heal, or people will heal, and then basically throw a fee on them, and it's like a debt trap kind of thing. But that scene was very much pruned down. I knew that was going to happen, and I worked it out a week ago that they would do that, just because it just made sense from an animation studio. They're clearly going to be pruning some things down. I think some fans assumed that this volume would be 4 episodes. I figured it would be 3 episodes, and they'll spend more time on the current volumes coming up after Volume 7, because that's where a lot more stuff is going to be going on, so they want to put more effort into that. I would, in a perfect world, I would love for this volume to be 4 episodes, but again, It's not a perfect world. You're never going to get a one-to-one adaptation, and my best advice is either go watch content creators that cover this kind of content like myself. I've got my full light novel breakdowns, and I'll be continuing to do more light novel breakdowns going forward, but you're never going to get a full adaptation. It's just obvious. How they pruned that, I think, was fine. The only thing that I would say as far as my criticism goes for this episode was the fight scene between Rudy and the tree when he's saving Sarah. That fight scene always, to me, when I read it in the light novels, was much longer and much more intense. But that's just how I perceive the light novels. I'm sure some will claim that it wasn't that long. I always felt it was a little bit longer. I did feel like it kind of really cut quick to him finding the tree and then him doing a couple of shots at the tree and then quickly pulling her out. I mean, it didn't even show him pulling her out technically. It just kind of went straight into him falling into the water. So to me, that was fairly trimmed. I would have liked to have seen at least another 5 to 10 seconds of stuff going on, because a lot can happen in 5 to 10 seconds, enough to kind of give an idea of, you know, the fight itself and how he saves Sarah. I was about to say Eris. And then, of course, there was some criticism of how Soldat was animated, but I didn't really see too many issues with that. That was, as far as my criticism goes, is that one scene. But I'm sure some people will say that I'm dooming. I particularly enjoyed the episode for the most part, but again, nothing is going to be perfect. That's just how the world works. But I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What did you think of the episode as a whole? I think it was fairly well done. It's what I expected. You're never going to get a full one-to-one adaptation, but it is important to talk about some of the cut content for anime-only fans so they at least know what has been pruned down. Because as I mentioned before about the girl being healed, that scene was pruned down because Rudy heals her, and then she panics, thinks, oh my god, he's going to charge me. He goes, no, it's all fine, it's all fine. She then gets up, she goes to the back alley with her friends, there's a multitude of friends, and then she waves, and then she leaves. That scene is important. I'm not going to say why. You'll just find out at a later date why that scene is fairly important, but they did prune it down just to him healing a kneecap, and then there's a boy behind her. That still can be easily worked into the future component that is relevant, but I was surprised how they pruned that down. But you've got to also remember that whole opening is kind of just music and playing Rudy's part out, but they could have maybe showed a little bit more facial expressions, couple of more extra seconds. Again, a lot can happen in a couple of seconds or even up to 5 seconds. There's a lot that can happen. So that's just as far as my thoughts go. I still think it was a pretty good episode. I'm still very hyped for future episodes. But again, I like to play it where I give some criticisms and some positives and weigh them all up and then kind of give my overall thoughts, because nothing's perfect. I feel like the anime community, when it comes to Mushoku Tensei, has this tendency to be like a pendulum, where it's either everything is bad or everything is perfect. There's never really an in-between where people can be fair and say, you know what, there's a couple of things here that could have been better, and these things were good. It's always one way or the other, and I try to be very fair and honest about what I think is done right and what I think is done wrong. So I hope people understand that that's how I approach things. I'm sure some people will say that I'm either dooming or coping, because apparently I can do both at the same time now. So I'd love to know your thoughts. I will be doing future videos on other characters like Soldat, or Soldad, as I like to joke with, and of course, definitely stay subscribed for more Mushoku Tensei content, Dharmachi, Overlord, Shield Hero, Eminence in the Shadow, you name it. So again, if you like this video, hit the like, subscribe, and I'll see you beautiful nerds in the next video.